There's a story in each of the so-called synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, where Jesus and his disciples are in a boat out on the Sea of Galilee. And while they're out on the sea, the text in Mark says that a great windstorm arose and the waves beat into the boat so that the boat was already being swamped. This story has always been really vivid for me. Even if we've never been out on a boat in the middle of a storm, we can imagine the kind of fear that this kind of a storm would create. We can imagine that because storms don't only happen to boats that are out on the water. Storms happen to us all the time. They happen to us when we are in times of national crisis. They happen to us when we find out that a loved one may have been exposed to COVID-19. They happen to us when a bad cancer diagnosis comes along. As we were talking about in worship yesterday, they happen to us where climate change amplifies the effects of natural disasters around the world. They happen to us when relationships become conflicted and troubled. Storms happen to us all the time. And when we find ourselves in a storm, it is so easy to respond the way the disciples did in the boat that day, where they panicked. The disciples go to Jesus in the boat, they wake him up, and they say, "Teacher, don't you care that we're perishing? We're dying here. This is a disaster." Now the reason, of course, that they had to wake him up was because Jesus was sleeping. Jesus was in the same boat they were. He was in the same storm as they were, but he was untroubled. He was untroubled enough to be able to rest. He was at rest in the middle of a storm. So Jesus wakes up in that story. He addresses the wind directly, speaks directly into the storm from his heart of calm, and the wind ceased. Jesus then turns to the disciples and he invites them to live with that same kind of faith. Jesus is in the boat with us as well. On whatever sea, in whatever storm we find ourselves, Jesus is in the same boat. And he is not threatened by the storms that are around us any more than he was threatened by the storm on the Sea of Galilee that day. Jesus lives from the place of stillness, the place of quiet, deep within, the place of complete and utter security. And the name for that place is faith. Jesus' faith, the faith of Christ, is available to us too. It was available to the disciples on that day on the Sea of Galilee, and it is available to us today. Now, living from faith is not a magic trick that will magically make all of your problems disappear. Living from faith is to live from the place of stillness, the place of quiet at the very center of your being, and you can live from there. It's the place that a storm cannot touch. And so, it's the place where you can engage the storm, but engage it not out of panic, but engage it with a steady heart. Friends, be well. And may we all come to know the still place of faith that is at the center of our being and live our lives from there. We'll see you soon.